Hi, this is Dan Pastorini, and you're listening to The Grilling Truth.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Out of Left Field. Graham McGowan here along with Chris Furry, bringing you the second episode of our podcast. Thank you guys for coming back and listening to us this week. Brother, how you doing over there?
I'm doing well. I'm getting ready to head out of the country tomorrow, so I'm going to enjoy this last podcast for a while that I'll be broadcasting from American soil.
So we're going international week 3. I love it.
Maybe I'll get some good information about cricket, and we can talk about that a little bit.
There you go. See if we're going to make the bats a little bit shorter but a lot wider. Plenty to talk to this week, guys. Had a couple of big things going on. We're going to touch on Jose Bautista's suspension. I'm not going to get too much into that because we went over a lot of it last week. I'm sure most of you guys have heard Byrd has been suspended, his second time for PED use. We will get into that. Clay Buchholz, we discussed guys struggling last week pitching with Matt Harvey. Now Harvey comes back great on Memorial Day, and Buchholz now has been demoted to the bullpen. And then we're going to get something a little bit more up my alley and some injuries we've seen to umpires this year that are getting a little bit more. We're seeing a lot more often than we want to see. So to talk about what they can do to improve that, and for any of you junior umpires out there, guys that are coming up, what you can do to keep yourself safe. So that being said, let's get into Joey Bats. We discussed he had a 1-game suspension. He was appealing it. He appealed it last Thursday, the day before our first show. It was upheld. He received a letter from Major League Baseball Executive Vice President John McHale Jr. He refused to share why the suspension was upheld. MLB apparently does not disclose the reasoning for anything being upheld or rejected or reduced. But this was a quote from Joey Bats to the media when he found out that the 1 game was going to stay in place. And I think they owe it to the fans who pay a lot of money to come watch me play and give them the specific reason why I am not playing today. I don't like that, because if you're going to say something like that they owe it to the fans, well, if you want the fans to know, you got the letter, why don't you share it? You tell us what's going on. Either make a comment and provide a basis for your comment, or just be quiet, take your 1-game suspension, and go. And for a little bit of humor in there, his 1-game suspension, he was, I believe, if I talk about the PA announcer for the Blue Jays that day.
Huh. Well, that's fun. No, I agree. I think that he's kind of poking the stick at Major League Baseball by using that excuse, you owe it to the fans to tell them why I'm not playing. Well, you know why you're not playing, so you tell the fans why you're not playing. Obviously, Major League Baseball thinks that he did something wrong. Now, personally, I don't see that he did anything that warrants a suspension, but Major League Baseball cited his on-the-field actions and his post-game comments. Personally, I don't think that you should be suspended for anything that has to do with your post-game comments unless you're directly berating the league. Guys are gonna quarrel. Guys are gonna make remarks about each other. They're gonna talk. They're gonna run their mouths to reporters because they're frustrated. They're angry, and you really shouldn't hold that against people. The guy got hit. He slid a little hard. He was involved in a fight. But the fact of the matter is he got punched in the mouth, and he didn't throw a punch. So I think that the suspension is unwarranted, but if it's upheld, it's upheld. He needs to shut up and take it.
And we discussed this last week when we were talking about Matt Harvey, not talking to the media, is that you have a media obligation, granted to a point, but you also need to have a little bit of respect if you're a media member to say, look, or at least MLB to understand things with a grain of salt. That, man, he just got off of a baseball field where he got socked in the jaw, he got nailed in the ribs, things happened that were unprovoked with likely intent to injure, and, yeah, he's going to pop off because you're asking him something that he's still heated about that happened in the heat of the game. I mean, you're asking him to bring things from what happens between the white lines into the clubhouse for public consumption.
Right, exactly.
One of the things that has kind of been leaking out of the clubhouse a little bit, And I think we saw this a little bit going into the season when Bautista gave an interview about, possibly giving the Blue Jays a hometown discount for his upcoming contract. He's in his late 30s, and he's wanting a 4-year, $20 to $25 or so million contract, which for that age of a slugger, let's be honest, I don't think anybody would agree if you pay someone that much money. Per Tom Verducci of Sports Illustrated, he did an article, and there was a source that was quoted telling Verducci, and I quote, and this is in part, the team was less bothered by the bat flip than by what they see as Bautista's grating style of play. He complains about strike calls and injects himself into any minor dispute or incident. Even if it's something in the infield, he'll come in from the outfield, source says. Basically, he has an opinion on everything about your team, but you're not allowed to give an opinion about him or his team, end quote. And again, that's from Tom Verducci of Sports Illustrated. And we've seen this. It happened last year against the Royals in the middle of an at-bat. We're in a 10-10 game in the 8th inning. Bautista's here spouting off at Jerry Meals on a foul ball, and he's chirping about a pitch that happened 2 or 3 pitches prior. And Jerry Meals is pretty good at giving guys leeway. I mean, we saw Bryce Harper last year get in his face, and you can read his lips saying, knock it off, before he finally dumps him because Bryce didn't stop. Jerry Meals got new baseballs from the bat boys, putting them in the bags. Bautista's still chirping, finally ends up dumping him with a 1-2 count. You see, guys want to say, man, you can't throw out a hitter in that situation, but the hitter needs to learn to bite his tongue. He was given his fair shake to say what he wanted to say. We see a lot of lack of restraint from Bautista. His self-control when it comes to popping off at umpires, especially about strike zone, it has been a consistent thing that we've seen, and I think it's really starting to – I think it may push him out of Toronto. He's in the final year of a contract. I wouldn't be surprised to see a team like Boston go look for him for an extra bat in the outfield if they're making that push for the playoffs, or another team this year. I think he'd want to stay more in the AL than the NL, but I think he's going to end up talking his way out of Toronto before the end of the season.
Well, and the question is the guy really earning a contract? He's hitting .238, and he's putting runners across the plate. He's got 34 RBIs, but he's not earning a late life contract of 4 or 5 years for that kind of money at his age. He's really not putting in the work that deserves the contract. And then his mouth, his mouth is pretty infamous. And I think you're right. I think that's what's going to really get him, maybe not out of baseball, but definitely probably out of Toronto.
Yeah, he's been there since 2009. He was there in 2008, went to Pittsburgh, and then came back, oddly enough. This year through 54 games, he's batting just over 230. I've got him at 231 here. That's a point or two off, 11 dingers. So he's swinging the bat decent, but for a hitter that, as I'm looking through all of his stats here, has crested 300 once in his career, and that was in 2011. Right. Everything else is near 250 or below. A couple of 270 seasons. He had 286 in 2014. He's a power hitter, but slugging, he's same thing, 500 or below. He's had 2 seasons where he's slugged over 600. That was in 2010 and 2011, 617 and 608 respectively. So, like I said, I think he's going to work his way out of there. When they asked him about, what he thought about the suspension and what happened on the field, it was things that basically you and I agreed with, is that he said Odor was trying 100% to hit me in the face, and that's why he popped up out of his slide. That he initiated unilaterally a fight with a push and a punch. It was all premeditated. Did it catch me by surprise? 100%. There was no development. It was literally an attack, which is okay. I didn't swing. I didn't push. I was the pushy and the punchy, which is fine. I'm a big boy. Which I think that's why we fine. If you want to fine him just to save face, go for it. But to suspend him for that, no, I disagree. And he also said, like we did, that nothing I did was malicious. I could have gone in and hurt him, and I chose not to. Right.
And I think that in some corners of baseball, there's been some murmuring about how that was handled by the officials. about how the warnings were issued and whatnot, and that maybe those murmurs have maybe made officials a little bit more sensitive to the idea of tossing guys instead of issuing warnings, as we saw, I think, the other day with Syndergaard getting tossed after going after Chase Utley.
He did.
I mean,
the third inning, he throws a 99-mile-per-hour fastball behind Chase Utley, and home plate umpire Adam Amari immediately comes out and gives him the old heave-ho. Now, granted, and I'm not dogging Adam Amari. I don't know him. I know he's been up in the bigs for a while. I think he's got a little bit less than 100 games in the big leagues. For those of you guys that don't know, Major League umpires and their union, they have vacation time, so there are a handful of call-up umpires from AAA that fill in. John Tumpane, Adam Amari, those guys are two of those. And Amari was the home umpire who tossed Syndergaard. Dan Iasonia, who was in the World Series, I believe 4 or 5 years ago when the Giants swept the Tigers, was the home plate umpire for the game in Texas, and he is the one that chose to issue warnings to both sides instead of immediately ejecting. Now, the umpires do have discretion and judgment to either warn or eject if they are concerned that, or if they believe that there was intentional or there was intent behind it. I think that from me looking at it, and I agree to a point, I think that after what we saw, it's a lot easier to go ahead and remove the pitcher than try and give him one more shot. I mean, hell, I remember Brian Dempster throwing at Alex Rodriguez 3 straight times before he hit him. He finally plunks him. Brian O'Nora issues warnings, and Joe Girardi got dumped immediately for coming out. And you can see him holding 3 fingers at his face, saying 3 times let him throw at my guy, 3 times. Right. So, yeah, I think this is it's a quicker hook than we've seen, but do I think that it was the wrong call? No, I think Adam Amari made a snap decision in a game that could have gotten quickly out of hand, and he stopped an issue from getting way bigger than it needed to be. And before I let you go in, Terry Collins got ejected soon after for giving Amari way more than an earful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was out there for 2 or 3 minutes, actually, arguing his point with the umpire before he got dumped. But I think you can see from the video that it's very clearly intentional. He threw at him, and like we discussed last week, I don't have a problem with that. That's tradition. You have a problem with a guy, you hit him. Do I like it? No. But you don't hit a guy with a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. That's excessive. That's intent to injure, in my opinion. But you can tell in the video, the catcher's set up in the middle of the plate. There's no indication that the pitcher's going to go inside, and the ball ends up behind Chase Utley. Mm-hmm. Do I agree with an immediate hook? I don't know. Probably not. I would have probably liked to see warnings get issued in that situation. But even beyond that, people are overreacting even more to this. Jim Palmer said on the Doug Gottlieb show that he thought that Syndergaard should have been suspended for that throw.
No way.
Which I think is excessive. I mean, can you make the case that he intended to hurt Chase Utley with a 99-mile-an-hour fastball? Yeah, but he threw it at the small of his back. He probably wasn't going to do much damage. He was going to have a contusion. It was going to hurt for a few days. It certainly wouldn't have tickled. But, I mean, was he trying to kill the guy? No. He didn't throw it at his face.
And how often do we see even announcers on games question intent when an umpire immediately tosses a pitcher? You know, it's no one can say 100% what the intent was, aside from the pitcher and maybe the manager if it was ordered, which I think we all could probably agree that the Texas thing was most likely ordered when they hit Bautista. But it's one of those things where, yes, it ends up being an issue that you toss Syndergaard in the 3rd inning, but when you issue warnings, it puts a lot more of the onus on umpires, because then when a guy starts working up and in and he clips somebody, I have seen games where I disagree with the dump, because, hey, if it's a 1-run game and you're putting the tying or winning run on, you know, that's probably not intentional. And you're asking these guys to read that intent. and you're going to tick somebody off no matter what you do.
Right.
I'm 100% with you. I don't think Syndergaard should have been suspended. The ejection, I'm fine with. Like I said, you can issue warnings before or not. Tom Hallion, the crew chief, came out and said that warnings were not issued before the series. That's one of the reasons why they wanted to have at least suspended, I believe, for the latter half of the series last year, and I think he was supposed to be suspended for the beginning of this year, and that all got overturned when they initiated or created the new bona fide slide rule. So,
right.
Even Terry Collins said, I thought this was dead. I thought we went ahead and said enough, when we beat them last year in the series. And besides and I can't remember his name, but the player who he slid into doesn't even play for the Mets anymore.
Huh.
I believe it was Ruben Tejada, and he's not playing with the Mets anymore. He's moved on. So,
right.
Yeah, I get he slid into a teammate that was there, and I'm not saying, that you don't stick up for your guys, but guys, he's not there anymore. So,
right.
Hopefully we bury the hatchet, we move on, and that's it, because, there is no reason, you've had your say. I think it's a good possibility that both the Rangers and the Blue Jays and the Dodgers and the Mets are going to see each other in either a divisional series or a league championship series, which I think will be great for baseball anyway because they're two fantastic teams. But let's put the junk behind us. Let's move on from it. There's no need to continue stoking the fire, put water on it, stomp it out, make sure Smokey Bear is, happy you're not going to catch the forest on fire, and let's get on with it, guys.
Right. And how long are you expected to hold a grudge in this league? I mean, for God's sake, it was last season.
Umpires, it's usually, okay, hey, you know what? I can remember things with Earl Weaver or Whitey, I believe it was Whitey Herzog coming out, and, they would put on, it was almost a show. And the next day they come to the plate meeting and says, man, we put on a great show for those guys, didn't we? And they laugh about it and they move on.
Right. What I'm talking about is players. How long are pitchers and hitters going to hold grudges against each other? I mean, the thing with Chase Utley happened last season. Syndergaard throws at Utley this week. The thing with Bautista, the bat flip with Bautista happened in Game 5 of the division series last year.
That's my point is you got guys that, hey, all he did was he threw a bat. Utley made a hard slide, and the player that he injured isn't even there. Umpires hell, you're getting cursed at and called everything under the sun about how horrible you are, how you're cheating, how you're this and you're that, and those two guys can put it aside and move on from it. But a pitcher who gave up a home run, which guess what? You're going to do it. Breaking news. It's going to happen. You're going to hold on to it that long. If you want to hold on to it, fine. Use it as intensity and come back and unleash the best pitch you've got. But put it in the glove, not in his ribs.
Exactly. So I think that really anymore is going to be beating a dead horse on that topic.
I agree.
Pretty much in agreement about it. I really want to get into this Marlon Byrd thing.
Let's go to steroids.
Let's go to steroids. I really want to get into this Marlon Byrd thing because this is going to be baseball now living up to this new rule of theirs, or not new rule, but this PED rule of theirs, where it's 50, 162, and then lifetime. And now Marlon Byrd's at 2 strikes.
And I believe now it's actually 82 games. That originally it was 50. The new rule I believe now is 82. It's a half season, a full season, and then a lifetime ban upon appeal. I believe is where it's at now.
Right. Yeah, that's. I think it's effective. I think it's more effective than what football's doing. For example,
it's what, 4 games? I think 4 or 6, something like that.
Yeah, 4 games. Now, to be fair, that's 25% of a season for football.
True.
So, if you take a 4 or 8 game suspension, you're losing a quarter to a half of a season, but you're losing it at the beginning of the season when you can still come back in the middle of the season and make an impact on how your team performs going into postseason races.
True. On that point, though, here's one thing I'll say. Contracts are not fully guaranteed in the NFL. getting paid on that game-to-game basis. And I've had guys, I've had friends that played in the NFL.
Right.
I mean, they've always said, the hardest thing that you have to make sure that you're prepared to do is budget, because your season, big picture, is so short. That off season goes a long way. If you don't know how to properly manage and stretch your money, you're not going to have enough when it comes, to the end, near the latter part of that off season. And you see guys that are taking, jobs at UPS or FedEx. So the thing you get here is a lot of those contracts are incentivized. So by being out those 4 to 6 games, you're losing the possibility of hitting that incentive. Plus, you're losing whatever your game fee is for those 4, 5, 6 games.
Right. So here's the thing about Marlon Byrd. Marlon Byrd's not a great baseball player with or without the PEDs, in my opinion. He's good, but I don't think he's ever going to reach the level of greatness. The guy is, he's a career 275 hitter.
Yep.
And,
An
he
OPS
hits 20 homers.
759, slugging 430, career.
Right.
Nothing is really that impressive.
But he's hit 20 homers in the last 3 seasons. But the question is, are those 3 seasons his PED numbers? Are they not? I mean, only Marlon Byrd knows that, right?
He got his first time he got popped was in 2012.
Right. So you think about 2013, 2014, 2015, he's at 20, 20, and 20. Is that PED numbers? Possibly. I think it's probably a fair thing to say that maybe those are PED numbers. And those still aren't great numbers. No.
And let's have some fun, to your point. I'm going to read you home run numbers from 2002 to 2012 because in 12 you can see where the season ended.
Right.
His rookie year, 1 homer. 03, 7 homers. 04, 5. 05, 2. 06, 5. 07, and 08, he had 10. 09, he hit 20. Hit 12 in 2010. Hit 9 in 2011. And hit 9 in 2012. I'm sorry. Hit 9 in 11. Hit 1 in 2012. Had 9 RBIs. And then in 13, when he came back, he hit 21 home runs.
Yeah. And the first time he got suspended.
24. I apologize. 24 home runs.
The first time he got suspended, he took that 50-game suspension when he tested positive for tamoxifen.
Correct.
He said that he was using it on the advice of a physician for medical condition resulting from surgery. I accepted my suspension without a challenge. He accepted the suspension without a challenge this time, too.
You know what tamoxifen is used for, Chris? I looked at that. Tamoxifen, granted, can be used for other symptoms, but it's widely used as a drug to help treat breast cancer in both men and women. Now, there's also a treatment. It's for angiogenesis, which helps to regulate the growth of new blood vessels. Obviously, none of us are ever going to know what he was using it for besides him, but right. I've got a hard time thinking that angiogenesis blood vessels while you're playing Major League Baseball is what you were using it for.
Well, and I can tell you from a military standpoint, in the military when you have surgery, they give you all kinds of things to help you recover faster because if you're not battle ready, then you're useless. I had 2 surgeries while I was in the military, and I never received steroids as to help me recover from them, especially not something like tamoxifen. I think that he may have been taking tamoxifen on the advice of a physician, but I don't think it was for a medical condition.
Let me ask you this, Chris, because I know as a hitter, I'm sure you've had your own injuries, and we've talked. Yeah, I remember when you telling me that you snapped your ankle doing a ruck run over at Fort Lewis. Mm-hmm. Byrd broke his wrist last season after being hit by a pitch. If you had to take a wild guess, how long do you think it would take you to go ahead and recover from that?
Well, I broke my wrist playing baseball, sliding into second base. And obviously it's not the same kind of injury. It's not an impact injury. He probably had a bone fragments issue that I didn't have from a traditional sort of break. But it was 6 weeks before I was even able to get a cast off. And then beyond that, maybe 2 or 3 months before I could really swing a bat the way I was swinging the bat before I got injured.
He was back in 16 days.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Now,
that's ridiculous.
I want to read. This is coming from. Well, Buster Only did a pretty good piece on ESPN.com. I'm going to get that in just a minute, but this kind of struck me as quick. Is obviously he wanted to be a long-term MLB player, and he's finishing out his 14th season had he completed this year. Byrd indicated to his teammates that this likely is going to end his career.
I think that's probably fair. I think that, well, he's been in the league now for almost 14 years.
Yep.
And you take 162 games, miss a full season, and it's 162 games from his suspension, so this is going to stretch into next season as well.
Correct.
So at that point, he's going to be 39 when he comes back. Do you really come back from that? I don't think you do.
No, and I mean, and with his lack of power numbers anyway, and if he got back, he'd be 2.5 months away from age 40. I don't think anybody really takes a chance on that. And what is he going to bring to you? I'll look at his fielding percentage, but his career fielding percentage is, let me see, he's 996 in left, 988 in center, 981 in right. So, he's a utility outfielder, but, at this point, a lot of guys that are coming up through the minors are playing multiple spots. So you're getting guys coming up that are able to move around the diamond a whole lot easier than they used to be. I don't see a place for him in today's MLB by the time he gets back from this suspension.
I don't either, and I think that he's copping out to the steroid thing. It is true that he didn't appeal his tamoxifen suspension, and he didn't appeal this suspension either, and he doesn't plan to. He didn't fight. He's not going to challenge it. He tested positive for ipamorelin, which is a growth hormone. So he's saying that he went to an independent chemist. His lawyers sent the supplements that he was taking to an independent chemist, and was concluded that the most likely source was a tainted supplement. I have a problem with that because it's a little bit difficult for me to believe that his protein shake in the morning was incidentally tainted with a growth hormone that just happens to increase muscle mass, increase strength, increase the size of new muscle fibers, and also decrease your own body fat. It improves your blood flow. It does all of these things that baseball players would kill for to be able to do naturally, and he just happened to get a supplement that was tainted with that specific growth hormone.
Right.
It sounds like a cop-out to me.
I agree. And this is coming from Buster Olney. Let me see. I want to find. Byrd had 20 homers through his first 408 games to the season in which he turned 29. Okay. He started consulting with Balco founder Victor Conti, and remember Balco because that was the big one that had Barry Bonds named in it. Mm-hmm. He's tested positive for PEDs in 2012, sacrificing 50 games and less than $2 million of his $6.5 million salary. He made $700,000 in 2013, then $8 million in 2014, $8 million in 2015. About half of the $38 million he has earned in his career was garnered after the time he was busted. Again, that's from Buster Olney on ESPN.com, their senior baseball writer.
Wow. I mean, that's a little bit incumbent on the league, I think, and on baseball in general, because if a guy gets busted for PEDs and then starts making big money, you're really kind of telling him that behavior is okay.
Right. I mean, D. Gordon, I think, is making $50 million, and he's going to lose, I think, $1.5 million or $2 million because of his suspension. And what really gets me on that is D. Gordon tested positive in spring training, guys. Spring training, and he wasn't suspended until almost a month later. Like that can't be acceptable anymore. If a player is testing positive, and I think we discussed this last week, and I know it's a little bit different, like with Bryce Harper, but if you're testing positive for PEDs, you should be out immediately. Make your appeal. That's fine because you have the right to an appeal, and it looks like these appeals are heard usually within a couple of weeks. Especially if you have enough evidence to go ahead and present to Major League Baseball. If it's overturned, you're immediately reinstated. You get all your back pay, and you move on, and nothing happens. But the fact that these guys get to keep these huge contracts, your boy Melky Cabrera, I say your boy loosely, but he had an all-star season, was forced by Major League rules to get a ring from the Giants, who didn't want him back on their roster. He wasn't allowed to be in the playoffs. They didn't want to give him a ring, and they had to. And he got a huge deal when he came back. Same with Johnny Peralta. And I get that the PA has to make an agreement to go ahead and basically agree to the possibility of losing a lot of money. And I think what gets guys is there's that 1% chance that, man, what if it's me? And I don't want to run that risk. But at least say, if you're that good, if you're putting up all-star numbers and you're that good, tear your contract up, make the veteran minimum the next year. Heck, even if you want to put the contract to the side, you make the veteran minimum the next year, and then if you get to come back and everything is deemed kosher, then pick up where you left off, or the team can renegotiate. But the fact that contracts are all guaranteed, it incentivizes cheating because there is nothing to say, hey, if you do this, you guess what, guys, you're probably going to get paid. And for guys in the minors, it's worth it. We've already seen the Mets pitcher took 3 suspensions in, I believe, a 2.5-year period. He's on his lifetime ban. He has to wait for an appeal. I think it's Generous Mejia was the name. I mean, I doubt if you're the first guy to be suspended for life, and I say that with air quotes because obviously you can appeal to come back in, baseball is going to want to send a message. I have a hard time thinking, A, that he'll get back in, and even if he does, anyone's going to give him a chance.
Right. Interesting to me, anyway, is Dan Herron tweeted following the suspension asking Ken Rosenthal, can I get back all the home runs he hit off me, please? Thanks. And then immediately followed it up with, also last year, he magically returned from a broken wrist in 16 days at age 38 and proceeded to homer off me that day. Jeremy Guthrie also said that Marlon Byrd is a joke. All you cheaters are a joke. Do it the right way one time, accept your ups and downs. And Justin Verlander even weighed in with an angry-faced emoji.
Well, and I don't want to get into the emoji or Verlander because, he's just got all that kind of good stuff going on. I mean, Kate Upton's in his life. How can you really go negative with that? I know all the guys out there are agreeing with that one. But Verlander's been one of the most outspoken voices in the steroid war. I mean, he hates it. And I know that a lot of guys are saying, man, baseball is just so dirty. Guys, steroids happen everywhere. They happen in the NFL. They happen in cycling, don't they? Oh, yeah, Lance Armstrong. Yeah, they happen in cycling, guys. Okay.
It's funny enough about the Lance Armstrong thing it's not like they took Lance Armstrong's Tour de France's away and then gave him to the second-place guy. They had to vacate the wins because the next 15 guys in the pack were also doping.
Yeah.
So, yes, it happens every.
It's a joke. I mean, baseball is not a dirty sport. It's full of guys who are willing to take a chance to try and make it to the big leagues. And if they get caught, I got caught because I probably figure out that I'm not really good enough to make it to the bigs without some type of extra push. So what's the worst that happens? You know what? I got popped. as long as you can sleep at night, you can keep cashing those checks. There is no incentive to not cheat. So, no, baseball is not still having an issue with steroids. There is an issue with certain players who are willing to bend the rules for their own personal gain, but baseball is doing a lot to try and get the game clean. And I know we discussed this last week, that, I think Bud Selig had a big push on allowing the steroid era to get out of control as it did, but with cleaning it up and with Rob Manfred now, they're making a good push to get the game clean and bring guys back to a lot more of an even playing field. And I think that as time goes on, we're going to see that shift start to happen where things are more even. I think we're really seeing it this year with how poorly hitting has been, offense has been rough, but also pitching. And we talked this last week with Matt Harvey, has been really tough. Now, granted, Harvey came out and had a great Memorial Day, and your boy Jake Peavy pitched himself a gem, even though I was really surprised to see your Giants drop 2 of 4 at the Atlanta Braves. But we discussed last week guys that have been struggling, and right after we get off our first show, Julio Urias pitched 3 innings in L.A. for the Dodgers, was immediately sent back down to the minors, then got called back up because Kenta Maeda was having some soreness, so he pitched. He's not pitching that great, but he's a 19-year-old kid. I'd be a little intimidated too. But one guy who has really, really been struggling has been Clay Buchholz of the Boston Red Sox. And in a surprising turn, John Farrell moved Clay Buchholz down to the bullpen, calling up one of the long relievers to take his spot in the rotation. Now,
right.
I don't think it was a bad move. Buchholz has not looked strong whatsoever. His first month of the season, every single start that he made, 5 games, the Red Sox lost all of them.
Right, and John Farrell's saying that this is not a punishment. It's not some sort of trying to get at Buchholz. In fact, his direct quote is, "This is something that's been done for a lot of years. A starter scuffles, they go to the bullpen to work things out. That's what we're doing with Clay." I agree with that sentiment. It's not something that happens as often as he's making it seem. The last really high-profile incident I can think of was Tim Lincecum in San Francisco. He went to the bullpen for the playoffs because he struggled for 2 consecutive seasons. And then struggled just before October. So they sent him down to the bullpen. He came out, pitched in relief, pitched very well in relief. But they gave him a start in that NLDS, and he got tattooed. So they put him back in the bullpen. I don't know that a bullpen seat is going to help Buchholz get back into the starting rotation. I think this might be something that is a permanent demotion.
I don't know if I'd go permanent. I mean, his long-term career numbers haven't been good, and we'll get into that. I want to kind of look at him month by month just so far this year. Just in the month of April alone, he finished with a 6.51 ERA. Made it 6 2/3 of the most innings that he pitched in a game. But the amount of runs, he allowed 20 runs in 5 games. So looking at it, and it was 5 earned runs against the Braves on the 28th. He allowed 5 earned runs against Houston on the 23rd, 5 earned runs against Baltimore on the 12th, and 5 earned against Cleveland on April 6th. Against Toronto, he went 6 2/3, no earned runs allowed. They still ended up losing 4-3. But, I mean, his command has been off. He's just through the month of April, 13 walks, 19 strikeouts. He was throwing 500 pitches. So, I mean, he was in every single start, he was less than 6 pitches away from 194 pitches on his opening game, April 6th, and he finished off the month with 104 pitches against Atlanta. So we're not seeing a lot of command from him, and when you roll over into the month of May, he rolled off, or the team rolled off 3 straight wins. Now, to be fair, out of those 5 games, 3 of those decisions he lost. He did not lose the Toronto decision. He did not lose the Cleveland decision. Now, against the White Sox in Oakland, he went 7 innings and 5 innings respectively, allowed, let me see what it was here, allowed 6 total earned runs, 4 against Oakland, but the Sox routed Oakland 14-7. So everything has been really, really jumpy for him. I mean, like you said, his command really is a big issue. Even when you go into May, I mean, he's giving up so much. He gave up 6 earned runs to Colorado, an 8-2 loss, and that was the game where he got reassigned. His ERA at the time that he got reassigned was a 6.35.
Well, and that game against the Rockies was it was abysmal. He gave up 3 home runs in that game, 7 hits in 2.5 innings, and it was terrible. But it really is indicative of what he's been doing all season and the problems that he's really been having. I think that when you look at a guy who's struggling to hit his spots, and I don't know if maybe his mechanics are off. I don't know if he's started struggling and then is freaking out about struggling and not being not able to fix himself. But when you're having as much trouble as this guy's having, it almost doesn't surprise you when he starts a game off well and then it all goes down the tubes. Which has happened. It's happened several times. Several times in his first 10 starts, it looked like, okay, he's going to break this slump. It really looks like he's going to come out of this, and then he was Clay Buchholz again.
And here's the weird thing about that is a lot of the runs he's giving up are deeper into games. I was just looking through the first month of starts, and I think he gave up 3 runs in the second inning he gave up 3 runs in the second inning, I believe it was to Toronto. And, you know, what gets me is, aside from his opening start where he gave up, you know, the 5 earned he gave up he gave 4 in the first, 1 in the second. Everything else has really been coming 5th, 6th inning or later, on the ones where he's really, really struggling. So what I'm finding is kind of odd about this is that it looks like, I don't know if he's just tiring out faster or if he's just getting into his head the deeper that he goes. Even the game against Colorado, he pitched 3 shutout innings. Then there were 2 runs in the 4th, and 4 runs came across in the 5th. So
he pitched 3 perfect innings.
Right. So it's not like he's pitching horrible, but it's these extended starts. So when he comes from his first time out of the pen was against Toronto on May 29th. He pitched 1 inning, gave up 1 hit, had a strikeout with a ground ball and a couple of fly balls. So I mean, no big deal there. 19 pitches, faced 4 batters, and got out of it. Great. Then they bring him in June 1st against Baltimore. Now, he got no help from the starters. Okay, Joe Kelly went 2 1/3 and gave up 7 earned runs, 3 walks and a strikeout. So I mean, Kelly's ERA is about an 8.5 right now. He is not, he has not found his stuff whatsoever. So you bring in Buchholz, and the Sox had managed to take a lead. Okay, so it was going into the bottom of the 6th. The Sox were actually up 8-2. Let me see what it was. It looks like it was 9-8. Okay, so you bring in Buchholz in the 6th, Buchholz came in the 4th, pitched the 4th and 5th with no issues. He gets into, his 3rd inning of work. 2 runs come across. Then another run came across in the 7th. Buchholz ended up taking the loss in this game. He went 3 1/3, gave up 3 hits, 4 runs, 3 of them earned. He walked 4 and struck out 1. So I don't know what seems to be going on, what his mental struggle is. but it seems like he doesn't have an issue coming in and attacking the plate early, but as the game goes on, he's just losing command. He's losing where he needs to be, and once that train comes off the tracks, there is no getting it on for him.
And this is how we circle back to where I said I think that this is a permanent thing, because that tells me one of two things is going on. A, Buchholz is getting tired early. And if he's getting tired early, what do you call a guy who pitches 2 or 3 strong innings and then gets tired? You don't call him a starter, you call him a middle reliever. And
maybe you can go long reliever there, especially now with the way that the game's being played, where they're bringing in specialist pitchers.
Right.
I mean, you can put him in for an inning and a half or 2, but once he's getting past 3, I mean, he's getting rocked.
So when you see a guy like Buchholz who's starting games off, pitching really well, retiring 9 batters in a row in the first 3 innings, but then in the 4th inning he implodes. What that tells me is that guy is no longer a starting pitcher. Whether it's in his mind or it's in his body, he needs to be in the bullpen, and I think he needs to permanently be in the bullpen. I think he's going to be more effective coming in for an inning, possibly 2. The only problem that I have with that is he was a starting pitcher for so long. And
right.
Starting pitchers have notoriously long warm-up routines. It wasn't an issue for Tim Lincecum because Tim Lincecum doesn't have a long warm-up routine. Even on game days where he makes starts, he warms up like a reliever. He throws a few pitches in the bullpen, and he's ready to go. But that is definitely not the norm for starting pitchers. Starting pitchers typically warm up for sometimes half an hour, 45 minutes before a game. And they'll spend time in the clubhouse warming up. They'll spend time on the field warming up. Then they get into the game and they start throwing warm-up pitches. It's a long process for a starting pitcher. And if he's going to go down to the bullpen, is he going to be able to make that transition from having 45 minutes to warm up to having 4 minutes to warm up?
But that also could have been part of the issue he's been having. If he's taking so much time, maybe he's tiring his body out more. If he's just starting to lose, that stamina that he's had. I got a couple of quotes here, and when he was initially moved, of course, the media asked him, what do you think? And his response is pretty simple. I got bleeping moved to the bullpen. You can write it down. Yeah, I can understand him being frustrated, but once he had his first win and his first post game start, and actually I believe he may have even gotten the win in that first post game start. Let me take a look at that because I had that written down, and I think that may have been the correct thing. I don't want to give false things. Yeah, he actually got the decision when he came in on May 29th. So that was his 3rd win of the year, and he said, quote, I needed a breather from everything. Yeah, it's part of the game. Pitching is pitching. Out in the bullpen, you just don't know when you're pitching, and that's the biggest thing I'm going to have to adjust to. Yeah, it was a good team win today. Those guys, speaking about the Blue Jays, are swinging the bats really good. It's fun to go extra innings and win and not get swept, especially here in the division. Furthermore, he adds, quote, he understands how I felt about the whole situation, speaking about manager John Farrell. I don't think anybody would be human as a baseball player if they didn't take it as a slap in the face or you've got to get better. And that's sort of how I took it. And he understood that. And you've got to come in a situation, extra inning ball game on the road, it's a different situation for me to be in. And I think that's why he did that, to show me he saw the work going into it. Awkward situation as far as being demoted, but able to get through it, end quote. So, he's taking it good because he came in and had a good outing. I think if you can work him out of the pen and then you start finding that stuff, that's one thing. You're really going to want to get the pitching coach in on him. Try and find that slot. Is he moving out of his arm slot? His stats have never been the best, okay? Coming out from his first season was in 2007. His ERA was 1.59. That was only in 4 games. The most games that he's thrown in a season were in 2012 through 29. He's hit 28 a couple of times. Last year he hit 18 games so far this year. He's been in 12. Clearly, obviously, 2 of those have been in relief. his wins above replacement have not been good. His best year was in 2013. I'm sorry, his best year was in 2010. He was 5.4 runs above replacement, 4.3 in 2013. But 2 out of the last 3 years, he's been a negative 1.6 in 2014, and so far he's almost at a negative 1 this year. So his ERA is a career just below 4. He's never been that top-notch guy. He's maybe a little bit like Josh Beckett, who used to have a higher ERA, maybe even a John Lackey, but he's lost the command to make it where I can deal with you giving up a couple of runs because long term I know you're going to put the ball where it needs to be and you're not going to become a liability for us. I just don't know if he's got something going on upstairs where he's having a hard time focusing in, or it could just be, either it doesn't feel right coming out, and I don't know why, or what's even worse for a pitcher is I'm doing everything like I normally would do, and the results aren't there, and I don't know what to do to make it better.
I think that it begs a question, though. I mean, are we moving into an era of baseball where pitchers don't go 15 and 20 years? I mean, is Colon the last of a dying breed?
I don't know if he's the last of a dying breed. I mean, I think you're going to see Bumgarner. I think you're going to see Kershaw go, for quite a while. I think that right now, because of what the steroid era was, and we saw that a lot with Matt Cain when he was coming through and really going on his big tear, is that pitching became such a commodity because guys were hitting so hard. You needed to have good pitching in your farm system. Now you're starting to kind of see a balance. So there may not be as many, like we said last week, aces, but the ones that are there that are consistent are going to be there for a long time. And it's the same with hitters. You're going to have guys that are up and down. They're going to come in the league. They're going to go out of the league. But the guys that are good, that are solid, you're going to see them there for a while. And that goes both to them and also to the team that they're with and the pitching coach that they're with, because you can have a guy that's great, but if he doesn't know what your strengths are, you don't communicate the same way, you're going to struggle. That's just really how it's going to be.
Right.
They need Joe Kelly to really, really improve. Rick Porcello and Steven Wright need to stay consistent. Porcello's been a decent. Probably now is going to end up being a number 2 guy, but they need to have consistent starting pitching, because what's going to happen when those bats cool off? Poppy's still hitting. Xander Bogaerts is on a huge hitting streak, so he's picking up right where Bradley left off. Mookie Betts has been hitting lights out, so they've got run support behind them. But it's one of those games where you want to feel that if you're putting runs on the board, yes, it's great to pick up a pitcher, but you also want to not always have that stress of, we as an offense have to create in order to bail this guy out of an issue. It's kind of probably the way the Broncos felt with Tebow, and they felt like they were always getting behind, and how can we bail him out so he can try to do something to get us a win? I'm not saying that they're exactly apples to apples, but I'm sure it's a similar feeling of we want to go into a game and have a comfortable lead and be able to just do what we're doing. Pitcher's pitch, we'll hit, and we'll go from there.
So, I think it's something that probably we should look into, because we've been talking for the last 2 weeks now. We've singled out a couple of pitchers, Matt Harvey last week and Buchholz this week, because they've been the most overtly struggling pitchers who we don't expect it from. But especially a guy like Buchholz, who's a perennial pitcher. He maybe doesn't throw a lot of games, but he throws well typically.
And had I not picked up David Price, he was supposed to be the ace of that staff. He was supposed to be the number 1 pitcher of that staff before David Price came over.
But something is definitely going on this season, because if you go across the country from Boston and you look at I probably will catch some flack from my friend Jason for saying this, but what's really the only bright shining star of the Seattle Mariners roster in Felix Hernandez, he's struggling.
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy who has double-digit wins every year for the last 7 years, and is now 4-4. His Ks per 9 has gone down by an average of 2 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched. His walks are up 1, and he's not struggling in the ERA department. He's still at a 2.86, but he's not pitching like Felix Hernandez.
Right.
So how many pitchers do we have to say, well, Matt Harvey's not pitching like Matt Harvey, and Clay Buchholz is not pitching like Clay Buchholz, and Felix Hernandez isn't pitching like Felix Hernandez, before we say, what's going on with pitchers this year?
Exactly. I mean, it's one of those where I don't want to say that we're not crediting hitters, but yeah, I mean, guys are just missing, and it's bound to happen. This may just be one of those odd years where everyone is just feeling it's just weird. We're seeing a lot of guys struggle in the same year that are big names, and it's not something that we've been used to seeing over the last decade or two. I mean, I think that really I know for me, I grew up with what I've always felt was the initial big three in pitching was Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, Greg Maddux. And then, we've seen things change where you had Zito, Mulder, and Tim Hudson over in Oakland. And we've seen the big three now in San Francisco. We've seen the big three in Chicago. We've seen the big three in New York. So, I mean, it's surprising to me how many pitchers are all kind of congregating in the same team, where maybe now it's not about, hey, I want to be the best pitcher. I think guys are starting to realize, I have the best opportunity to win here, and these guys have been making it through. What's the secret? Maybe it's just me seeing that, but it seems like sports
I don't think
is
that it's unique
to
to baseball either, though, because it's not something we're now just seeing with pitchers, which we are. We're seeing it with pitchers, and we're not really seeing it as much with hitters, where guys are going to other teams where they're big name hitters. But we're seeing it in sports like basketball, where we're having these big name teams where you'll have a heavy front load of 3 or 4 big names on a team. Miami Heat, Boston Celtics are doing it. We're doing it.
Right.
And they're doing it for one reason only, because they want to win championships. And I think that pitchers realize that, yeah, if you have an ace on a team, that's great. So every 5 days you're going to win a game. But if you have 3 aces on a team, then you're winning 3 out of 5 times, and that is what puts you in the World Series.
And at this point, especially I think more so in baseball, pitchers a lot more get graded on the rings, because it's a lot harder. Oh, well, this guy threw this many strikeouts. Well, yeah, so did this guy. So it's one of those things where, as far as pitching goes, unless you are just a freak of nature a la Kershaw, Bumgarner, you kind of just get lumped in with every other pitcher that's, in baseball, aside from the ones that are just really bottom of the barrel. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, because I disagree with you to a point, because we saw the Tigers try and pull hitters, and we had Miggy Cabrera, you had Victor Martinez, you had Prince Fielder. They didn't pull it off. Everyone really thought that the Mariners were going to be a contender when they got Robbie Cano. Nelson Cruz was out there. Justin Smoke was really hitting the ball well. They didn't do anything. The Angels picked up Josh Hamilton, who unfortunately really tanked. They had Pujols. They had Trumbo when he was hitting the Trump bombs. Trout. I mean, so and actually Trumbo's been playing really well for Baltimore this year. But I think part of the thing is hitters are so compartmentalized on hitting in certain spots in the lineup, because they expect certain scenarios on the field, and that's how they're going to be pitched.
And that's what I was getting at. I think that maybe we had a little bit of a misunderstanding there.
Right, because when you have multiple big hitters, I can pitch around you because maybe I have a better record against him, or I know a pitch that I have that he struggles with, and it's almost sometimes easier to move around big hitters, whereas, if you can get, let's say for argument, Bryce Harper in a big spot, or we'll say David Ortiz, and you've got Mookie Betts and Jackie Bradley Jr. and Xander Bogaerts, who don't mind hitting in spots that aren't prime spots in the lineup, or they're comfortable moving around because they're seeing the ball well and they can adjust. You do a lot better with 1 or 2 really big bats, or a big bat in your 1 or 2 spot who can get on base and has wheels, or can get that guy with wheels moving around the base path, and then your big bat at 3 or 4 who can start driving guys in. I think a lot of big bats can end up actually hurting a team more than helping them long term. You want guys that are consistent, hit for average, a couple of guys for power. That way you don't have all the strikeout numbers.
Right. And what I really meant was that I think what we're seeing is the idea that pitchers themselves are easily enticed by a team that has 2 or 3 other guys who could be aces elsewhere. They're more easily enticed to go to that team because they know and they realize, hey, if I'm in a rotation that has 3 or 4 great pitchers, then my opportunity to win a championship is higher. Whereas you see hitters,
his payday goes up.
Right, and you see hitters who are like, well, if I go to Boston, I'm going to hit behind Big Papi. I'm never going to hit in front of him, or
right.
I'm going to hit 6 or 7, or I'm going to hit 8 or 9, and I'm not an 8 or 9 hitter. I'm a 2, 3, maybe even 4 hitter, and I'm not going to go to a place where I'm not going to hit 3 or 4.
Exactly, and I agree. And I know we got a little bit off track of where we were looking, but to kind of close it out, I agree with you because hitters are going to play almost every day. Pitchers go 1 out of 5 days. So if you're if you go to a staff, and I'm thinking Jake Arrieta here because we saw he didn't have the same stuff in Baltimore as he does now, and I would be surprised if Boston is going to pay him the money that he's going to garner from the free agent market. I mean, he's gone somewhere that had everything put together where it needed to be. He found his niche. He's found that all the pieces have fallen together, and that dude is going to get paid. Just back up the Wells Fargo truck to his house, ask him how much he wants, open the doors, let it all fall out, and then, hey, we'll see you wherever you're going to be.
Right, exactly. So what we're going to talk about next is not really my area of expertise. I do have some opinions about protective equipment, but more from players' perspective, so really from the perspective of somebody who might be behind the dish catching. But you and I have been talking on and off the past week, and apparently umpires are getting hurt a lot this year. So
I've seen it quite a bit, and it's what concerns me. And a lot of guys, think it's funny. Oh man, umpire got hit. And that's hilarious, guys. Yeah, okay, that's great. The umpire is a villain, but if you stop and think about it for a second, there are really 2 guys on a baseball field that have probably the biggest concern of concussions: the catcher and an umpire. Because if that catcher misses that ball, he is catching straight heat normally, because the one that's going to hit you is not normally a curveball or a slider. Straight heat is getting either missed by a catcher, or it's going off the top of his glove, or it's going off the thumbs and it's going straight back into your mask. So what's been kind of bothersome to me, and I went back and looked at the injuries that I've seen so far this year, and I know that there have been some others that were not injuries that came from blows from a baseball. Kerwin Danley is the one that comes to mind, and I think everyone's probably seen him. He used to wear he still wears the Wilson hockey mask, but he used to wear the original one, and he actually had the clear goalie throat protector. He would wear that around it because that mask was a little bit shorter on the chin. He has gotten hit, I think, 3 or 4 out of the last 5 years in the head. He's taken a Strasburg fastball to an area that neither one of us really wants to consider taking a Strasburg fastball to. He's also taken one to his helmet. He's taken a Jose Fernandez fastball to the crown of the helmet. He has taken multiple shots to the cup and the mask, 3 mask shots that I could find in 4 years. He was knocked out in 2008 wearing the traditional face mask and went to what we refer to as the bucket now. We've seen John Hirschbeck take a foul ball to the throat. Nothing you could do. He was wearing a throat guard, but sometimes you just find one under the armor. Manny Gonzalez had the same thing happen to him. Foul ball came right up underneath the chin of his mask, and he was going down. It was the worst possible way this could have happened. Is he's tracking the pitch, and as his head's moving down to see where the pitch goes, to see if it fouls off the batter, it comes up into his throat near his Adam's apple, and he came down and held it there. So it wasn't a hit and goes away. All that force stayed there and went right through his neck. We saw Jeff Kellogg leave earlier this year in the Braves, stick one to the face. His stance might have hurt him a little bit. Seen a couple guys take some shots to the groin. David Rackley got hit. He had to leave the game. An umpire a couple nights ago got hit twice in the same game in the same spot. And I don't care what you say, cups protect you, but it still freaking hurts. Trust me. But what's really gotten me has been I've seen a lot of umpires who are getting out of that slot that we talked about last week, which is supposed to be on the inside shoulder of the catcher nearest the hitter. The best thing that you can do, and the way we try to do it, is basically you put your outside leg away from the hitter, almost kind of down the middle of the back of the catcher. You kind of want your back toe to be nearest to the instep of your opposite foot, and you want your chin to be just above the catcher's helmet and on that corner of the plate. And we have seen multiple guys, Mike DeMuro, Chris Guccione took one, and they move either to that outside shoulder of the catcher, or if the catcher moves to the outside, they follow him. Chris Guccione did that, and unfortunately, he moved into the point of the plate was bisecting his body, and he got popped right between the eyes. Tom Hyan did it last year. A ball went off the right side of his mask. Had he not moved, it would have gone right past his head. I had the good fortune of talking with the guys at the Wendelstadt School for Umpires, and when I asked them about the slot and how it's taught as far as guys moving or staying in it, they said, and I quote, "The Wendelstadt Umpire School teaches students to always stay in the slot and never go to the catcher's outside shoulder." Now, granted, once guys are in the big leagues, they're going to do what they feel is going to be best to give them, the best look at the pitch, because they don't want to miss that pitch. The issue is I worry that guys are beginning to sacrifice safety for what might be a little bit better of a view. But if you're in that slot, I promise you, you can see that outside corner. I worked the slot for that Nationals game I talked about this past weekend, and it was fine. I had a couple right past my head. I took one foul ball on the right shoulder, and it was fine. It hit my chest protector. But we need to continually see upgraded, safer equipment for umpires, and guys need to be getting in that slot. The slot will not always protect you. You'll get that two-seamer off the hands that goes straight back. It can happen. But guys need to stay in that slot. And there is some newer types of umpire equipment and catcher equipment that's coming out that is going to help keep umpires safer.
Right. And I want to, for all of our listeners out there who, like I didn't before, have absolutely no idea what you're talking about right now, if you go to our Twitter feed at @ooleftfield at Twitter, you will see a graphic there in our history that explains exactly what Graham's talking about when he says the slot. It diagrams where umpires should be given a catcher's position, and also where the ball is going to go when it hits the bat, given the location of a pitch. So it explains that slot that he's talking about right now.
It does, and I'm sorry I didn't get on that earlier, but yeah, we are on Twitter at @ooleftfield, or you can reach us on email at ooleftfield@gmail.com. We talked about this, Chris, and I know you have. I don't want to say a difference of opinion, because I've worn both. The biggest thing guys think that helps umpires is a different mask. A lot of guys still wear the traditional Wilson Dynalite umpire mask. It's what you've seen guys wear for years. Sure, you get a couple of guys that wear maybe the diamond mask or something different here and there, but more often than not, you're going to see guys wearing probably one of three masks, either the Wilson Dynalite, the Wilson Titanium, or the Nike mask. And the Nike mask is usually gifted by a catcher. Okay, they have helmets that are out there. The Wilson Titanium, or the Wilson Shock rather, and the All-Star System 7. The All-Star is like what you see Buster Posey wear. A couple of umpires are wearing that. The big thing that's coming out now is by a company called Force 3. Okay, and they're on the internet at www.force3progear.com, and they have designed both a helmet and a traditional mask that really is going to be revolutionary. The first guy to be wearing that in the big leagues is Tyler Flowers, and he is the catcher for the Atlanta Braves. Signed a contract with them because the majority of catchers are either working with Mizuno. We've seen a little bit less on the Nike side, but usually Mizuno or All-Star, Under Armour. Under Armour and All-Star basically go hand in hand. Their equipment is virtually the same. I think they're part of the same parent company. Force 3 is really coming into things, and they have a really neat YouTube video of a test of a baseball and a softball going to the mask. The mask has 3 sets of shock absorbers. It has 1 on the chin and then 2 on either corner of the top pad of the mask where it begins to curve down right to where those face bars are, where you see the bars sticking out to the side. They claim, and from what I've read, they have a patent pending on this, and they've done a bunch of G-force and different impact testing to go ahead and make this claim. It reduces impacts by up to 50% in most cases. G-forces are greatly reduced. There is a video of Tyler Flowers taking a foul tip right to the mask. It springs off, and he just reaches back for a baseball and keeps on going. They weigh a little bit more, but the way that they've created it is basically you have the initial frame that fits your face, and then the actual main part of the mask frame that you're used to seeing is larger than the pads, and it almost fits over. It doesn't change your view very much. You still have a really nice view of the field from the ones that I've tried on. There's a little bit more weight to it, and the main pads are kind of a vinyl, so they have a leather option, which I think is better. But I've been surprised that I haven't seen more umpires wearing this. I think it will definitely help guys not have all those concussion issues, because the other issue that guys have is that if they're coming off the field to get tested for a concussion, now you're down to a 3-man umpire crew. And I don't care what you say, as good as these guys are, the 3-man system is great, but the 4-man system is better because that way you have an umpire at every base. All of a sudden that check swing from that left-handed batter over at third, you're asking a guy standing in the middle of the field if there's a runner on base. It just is going to put you at a disadvantage. I really hope that Major League Baseball gets behind this technology. I know it's going to be made more available to umpires. I know Force 3 is out there. They're really getting the word out. If you guys are interested in learning more about Force 3, again, you can go to force3progear.com. Also, Mike Goodpaster at The Grueling Truth, who has set us up doing Out of Left Field for you guys, did a great interview with the creator of the Force 3 mask, and you can find that on thegruelingtruth.net.
And I'd like to point out quickly about these masks that they make over at Force 3. The spring-mounted shock suppression system that they have on there is really that revolutionary technology that you're talking about, and you're really not paying a lot more than you would pay for a Mizuno mask, if you're even paying any more at all. When you're talking about $170, $180 for a hockey style mask, you're not paying more for this revolutionary technology or the quality of protection that you're going to get from this gear.
Not at all. I mean, the titanium masks are going to run you about $120 from Wilson. Their Dynalites are about $80 or $90. The Force 3 runs you about $150, which, I mean, for what you're getting, it's well worth what you're paying for. I know a couple of guys that are using it. They do make the hockey style mask. I haven't seen it much yet. There aren't a lot of hockey style masks I like. I've worn the Wilson. I actually owned both the original Wilson, the first iteration, and the Shock V2. It was nice. It's just weird taking it off and trying to make calls using your left hand because of how much more bulky it is, but it also gives you a great field of vision. Now, the Wilson mask, the Shocks, from what I have read, some things I have heard, even though it absorbs, the Shocks are, I mean, I can push the mask in with my hand. So because they're so easy to push in, it doesn't really absorb a lot of impact. I see more guys wearing the All-Star System 7 Series mask. The way that it's designed, it has more of a flare to it. we actually saw Buster Posey 2 years ago take a foul ball right off the crown of that mask. And it brought the mask pad of the chin up to almost his nose. He got up and was fine and kept on going. So, they're designed to take straight shots. I actually had a catcher this year in a high school game take an upper 80s fastball right between the eyes, and it shook him, but he was able to walk it off and was still okay. The way the All-Star mask is designed is even though there are no springs, the frame is actually screwed onto the main bucket part of the mask with spacing, so it almost has a bit of a floating feel to it. So if a baseball does hit it, it allows it to compress a little bit and try to get more of that force to go around the head instead of straight in. Now, I did also, in talking with the Wendell-Sat school, they said that they have fantastic medical staff as far as making sure that the guys who need to be treated are, and that there's no, and that they are checked for head injuries. They have a concussion protocol, same as Major League players do, and if they have to come out, that they will. So, baseball is good at protecting the umpires, but right now Wilson has a contract with Major League Baseball, and that's why most umpires have their gear from Wilson. Obviously, Joe West, one of the most notorious, infamous, famous umpires, whatever word you prefer to use with him, has worked with Wilson for quite a number of years, and has he is the guy that helped create the main line of chest protectors that you see now, which I don't know if you knew that, Chris, but the black chest protector with the big gold W, or the one that Jerry Lane wears, it's a gray protector, has a kind of that cushion under the neck. Those are actually called West Vest chest protectors. So he was instrumental in creating that, making it more of a hard shell is what we call it now, because the way it used to be was guys wore the same kind of protector that Mike Scioscia would wear for the Dodgers, that soft ribbed protector that you still see young catchers wear. They were wearing that and they were taking shots. Now it's a thicker foam with hard pieces of plastic that you can take off with Velcro and wash your protector, but it provides a little more protection. Force 3 offers a chest protector. It's Kevlar lined, but it's a little bit softer on the outside. I've heard guys say that it's kind of hot and a little bit heavy. I want to try it because it takes a very low profile, which is nice. It allows you more freedom of movement. So, it's something I'm definitely going to try. They have a great line of products. I talked about, and I'll kind of end on this, talk about guys getting hit near the groin and in the leg. Not the best place we want to finish, but there are some great cups out there for use, guys. Diamond makes one. It's actually for MMA fighting, but it's sold on JerryDavis.com, who's also another Major League umpire. It's a great cup, well-designed, can take a very hard hit and protect you. The Nutty Buddy, which I know guys think is a funny name, but it's a really nice design. If you YouTube it, ESPN Sports Science did a great special on the way it's designed, what it does to protect the wearer when a baseball hits in that area. It's still going to hurt, but what it does to protect you from rupturing some of the important guys that are down in that area. Lastly, Force 3, like I said, mask, they have chest protector, they have shin guards. The other piece that I have for them that I absolutely love is they have made thigh pads. Not like what you're seeing from football. They're not thick. They're less than probably a half inch thick. They give you a pair of gray tights, top to bottom, which is great for being behind the plate because you're going to have your shin guards on anyway, so it keeps your shin guard straps from rubbing on your legs and irritating them. But they have a pocket built onto the inside of each leg, and you fit in these two pads, and I got hit in the thigh twice this year, and those pads were dead center over where I got popped. It's great for those foul balls that end up dropping and popping back up into you, or if the catcher just missed one and you're in that slot and that's one of those areas you might get popped, you're going to feel it, but it's going to protect you a lot from getting those deep bruises and leg injuries. So, guys, please go check out Force 3. Again, it's force3progear.com. It has some great stuff. If you ever want to know kind of what I think, obviously, we're not sponsored by these guys, so I'll give you my opinion. And, again, it's just that. It's my opinion. But you can always hit us up at OOLeftField on Twitter. Just ask me, hey, what do you think? I mean, Chris and I are pretty smart. We can figure out if you're asking an umpire a good question that you're probably asking me and not him. But if he answers, I'll fly out to California and beat him when he gets back from being out of the country, or Arizona, I guess, this time. But again, guys, I appreciate you listening. Hope you had a really enjoy the show. We went a couple minutes longer than we did last show. We're going to try and start curtailing these to 45 minutes to an hour. Sorry we got long. But again, please hit us up at OOLeftField on Twitter or OOLeftField@gmail.com. Tell your friends, get them listening, start talking, get at us. We really appreciate any feedback we can get from you guys and conversations. We want to do this show where it can be something that you all enjoy doing, because obviously we love it. It's why we're doing it. So, Chris, I hope you have a good trip, brother. I know we're going to be doing the international show starting next week, and I hope it goes fantastic. And I appreciate you jumping on, Battle. Do you anything else that you want to say to the folks before we sign off for the week?
I don't really have much else to say. I think I'm excited for the international version of our show. Next week, I will be coming to you from Paris, France. And the following week, I will be coming to you from Rome. And then the following week from Germany in Berlin. And then I think I'll round it out with a couple of weeks coming to you from right around central England, Lincolnshire, right near Nottingham. So I look forward to it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Then we will expect a hello and goodbye in the proper language of each country that you are in when we start up and sign off the show for that week. So
that's not going to happen, but okay.
Battle, great job as always. Had a blast, guys. Again, thank you for joining us. Please get at us on Twitter at OOLeftField or OOLeftField@gmail.com. We'll have the podcast up here, and give us some ideas, feedback on what you think, what you'd like to have more of, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. This is Graham, and for Chris, guys, again, thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next week with more ideas that, God, we swear, are just straight out of left field.